Welcome on in, Browns fans. Spencer German, Anthony Moeglin with you as we get you ready for the weekend as we turn the corner into Browns Vikings from across the pond in London. I think Megs is hosting a party and serving tea and crumpets. So
we're doing tea and crumpets. That's what we're doing.
You inviting all Cleveland over for that?
All of Cleveland's coming over. Everyone who saw your tweets coming over to do tea and crumpets.
It's 18 million people. That's a lot of people. That's
18 million is a lot of people. They're coming through. We got a lot of tea, a lot of crumpets, all the things.
I'm trying to think how many how many people live in Cleveland? Like what percentage of people in Cleveland?
I honestly, for whatever, I think it's 1.2 because I saw a tweet 1.2 million because I saw a tweet today that was whining about the complaining about the Guardians playoff starts and how nobody can get to the stadium at 1 p.m., which is whole nother story for a whole nother show. But I think it's like in the 1 millions. But that's. Maybe I'll have 1 million people over.
If you're inviting all the people that saw the Shedeur tweet, you're gonna have a bigger population at your house for this party than all the people that live in Cleveland. That's pretty crazy.
Doors open. Doors always open at Anthony's house.
Anyway, guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Of course, you can head on over to our new home, our new website, roundtable.io/sports/NFL/Browns for any of our written content. And I can tell you, it's been an eventful week for sure. I've written multiple stories about Dillon Gabriel, what he had to say about becoming the starting quarterback. We're going to talk about that here in a second. There's a Joe Flacco story up there. There's certainly a lot of discussions happening about Shedeur Sanders, and all those are all things we're going to get into on this episode of the podcast as well. But I do think, Anthony, like the natural starting place here, despite all the fanfare around Shedeur, obviously, is Dillon Gabriel because he's the starting quarterback for this team going into week 5. And I think this change obviously happened sooner than we planned. Like, I think when the season started, I think when we mapped this thing out, the natural answer, I think, was like, first 6 games. Mm-hmm. Then it became apparent after like the first 2 games that he might not make it the first 6 games. I still wondered if they, would wait till after London because it's a weird week and a weird schedule and all that to play a rookie. But I actually heard, Tommy Reese's comments on Thursday were interesting because he said, I think the outside eye maybe paid attention to that type of stuff more than we do. And I thought Dillon had a really good line too, where he was like, listen, if you wait for the perfect moment, you're going to wait forever. And so I think the Browns kind of felt that way too. And it was like, listen, they need to inject some life into this offense. And so this happens before many of us expected. But it is, Dillon's opportunity now to sort of see what he can do with this offense. And I think there should be excitement because let's just call a spade here. That offense was or is at this juncture like rock bottom from the first 4 weeks of the season. And if Dillon Gabriel can at least lift it off rock bottom and give you something to feel good about, I think that is probably worthwhile in the grand scheme of things in terms of trying to just, again, inject a spark into this group that is one of the worst in football at this stage.
And it's worse than, we thought it was bad last year when Deshaun was running it. Like this offense, this version's worse than it. It's worse than in 2023 before Flacco got here when it was a mixture of Deshaun. And it was, I think that was DTR year as well. There's some DTR in there as well. That was his first starting year. So like, this is as bad as it gets. And there's a lot of reasons for it being bad. Like, I think you and I have talked about it a lot. Like, this isn't just a quarterback thing. Like he has been playing horrible, but the offensive line's been playing bad. The receivers have been playing very bad. Like Jerry Jeudy had a bad week last week, and they've been playing a very tough schedule. Like that can't get lost in the fact like they just played 3 straight teams who have their eyes set on a Super Bowl. And if you go back to week 1 before Joe Burrow got hurt, like the Bengals had their eyes set on a deep playoff run. Maybe not so much the Super Bowl, but you played a gauntlet of a schedule and you come out of it. And I think part of this too is something that you and I are going to get to, Spence, is I think that they view this game on Sunday as a winnable football game for a lot of reasons. And if you take Flacco over there and you try to just grind one out the way they've had to do it, I don't think that's fair to the rest of the team to be like, hey, this is the only chance you have to get in one of these games where we think we have a legitimate chance to win. So certainly earlier than I was expecting. I've been on this show a lot, saying it was going to come after the bye week was my guess, but I'm definitely excited to see it. What Dillon showed us in the preseason was gives me a lot of excitement for what he can show come Sunday morning.
Listen, and I think they're going to sort of keep it simple for him. Like we saw a lot of those level concept plays, and I do think that's part of the offense that's lacking is those rollouts. You can't do that with Flacco. We know he's not mobile. So there's some different, wrinkles that get added in with somebody like Dillon Gabriel there. And like I said, the idea here is the offense is so bad. You got to try something different. And this is an easy thing for Kevin Stefanski to change. Maybe not easy because quarterback is a very important position, but this is the one thing tangibly he can say, I can fix this, or I can try to fix this right now by just putting somebody else out there. It's not that easy to do that on the offensive line because the options you have are, more known commodities that just aren't very good. Like your depth there is just not great. And the same thing with like guys dropping passes and like this receiving core. Like the receiving core is clearly, it's an issue. There's a lack of depth there. We've talked about that a ton since really dating back to the offseason and training camp and all those different things. That's a need for this team. And it hasn't helped that Jerry Jeudy's also had his fair share of issues. But yeah, like I understand the thought process here. If you're trying, I don't know that there needs to be an explanation as to why now. I think it's staring you right in the face. Like if you've watched these games all the first 4 weeks, the offense has been terrible. So I can certainly understand and wrap my head around why making this change now makes sense. And it's a good opportunity for Dillon Gabriel to get out there and see what he can do with the offense. And, I think it's going to look at least a little bit better, but do I think it's all going to be fixed? No, because Kevin Stefanski has answered every question about when he was asked about Flacco being the starter after the game, when he was asked, just about making the change in general. All his answers come with this caveat of, well, we're making this change, but it's not about one person. And I think that is his admission that he knows there are bigger issues with this group than just the quarterback role. So I think that's important to keep in mind here too.
Yeah, and even Batonio today made a comment like, yes, he's excited about Dillon, but he was like, yeah, I think we all let Joe down in a number of different ways. And I think you can look at it like that, but also like, Father Time's undefeated. And the one thing that I just kept going back to was thinking back to 2023, like Joe was ripping it down the field. I've said this 10 times at least on our show. Like he was just throwing it down the field. His arm looked live. He was making, maybe they weren't the best decisions, but he was pushing the ball down the field. Like even Sunday was the epitome of it all, but like he was just kind of lofting balls downfield, hope balls, balls that didn't come out of his hand hard, didn't come out confident. And that just wasn't the Joe Flacco that you're used to. And like, okay, if you're not going to do that, that's the one thing that, we loved about him was he was taking shots downfield and could flip games quickly. If you're not going to do that, then there's really, unfortunately, no point to have you in because we're not learning what these rookies are. We're not putting ourselves in a better chance to win. And ultimately you're wasting a lot of time and you're wasting a very good defense. You said this a couple times about, you can't waste how good this defense is. And I think this is the first step in trying to make use of a generational group that the Browns have.
Yeah. Listen, I think it totally makes sense why they're doing this now, even if it's earlier than anybody kind of expected here. And now Gabriel gets a shot. I'm excited to see what the offense looks like. I think as we sort of alluded to already, there's different elements that they can probably do with Gabriel that they couldn't do with Flacco, and that's worth noting. And now it's about, setting him up for success the best that they can against the Vikings defense. I think that is maybe the other thing that, I don't know, I think it should probably worry Browns fans. And Brian Flores is notoriously one of the best at like stymieing young quarterbacks. Like rookie quarterbacks just do not do well against his defense. They blitz a lot with a banged up offensive line like the Browns have. I got plenty of concerns about what that's going to look like, how they're going to be able to sort of control that. So when I say like it could still look maybe a little bit better, but it's still really bad, I don't think that that's like hyperbole. I think there's a really good shot that this just fixes very minute things and allows you to maybe move the ball up and down the field a little bit better. But that the glaring issues that this team has are still going to be noticeable when you sit down and watch this game on Sunday.
We haven't done our predictions yet, but are you thinking 20 points? Or are you thinking 20 points on Sunday or what? Where's your head at in terms of that?
I'm like close to saying 20 points, but I'm not quite sure yet because I mean, I listen, Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator, and I think that's part of the problem for me is like, this team hasn't done that since week 13 of last year. Am I really supposed to believe that like Dillon Gabriel is the fix that gets it to 20 points now all of a sudden? Now the kicker here is if the defense dominates, which I will talk more about like the matchup here itself, I think that's very, very possible. Maybe they give you a touchdown, right? Maybe they set up the offense with a short field like they did against Green Bay to set up a touchdown. There's a lot of different sort of options there and ways that could play out. And maybe that changes things. But we'll get into that here a little bit more later. I do want to talk about, though, because what I also think is interesting about the move to Gabriel is that, I think because he's the guy that they drafted and the guy that they really wanted in the third round and they raved about and all these things. And I get it, he's a third round pick, but they have spoken so highly of this guy. They talked about his supercomputer brain. They talked about how, he's the guy they really had their eyes on. They had these great meetings with him during the pre-draft process, all these things. I do think that like if he struggles as much as Flacco and the offense still looks really bad, I do think like that becomes a conversation for regarding Kevin Stefanski, and it's going to be basically what I'm trying to get at is like it's going to be all eyes on Kevin Stefanski. Like if this quarterback project that you had your sights set on and really wanted, and the guy that you were like raving about, if he flops, this is the thing we've been waiting to see, right? Is Kevin Stefanski develop a young quarterback? If that starts to sort of go to the wayside, I just wonder how people feel about Stefanski and sort of his job security to a degree or his job status to a degree, because it is the last thing you're holding on to, even though Dillon Gabriel was a third round pick. This is supposed to, you're expecting him to give you something out of this guy in general, if he's the guy that you really loved. And if you don't get that, I wonder what that means for like how Kevin Stefanski's viewed. I'm not saying he's going to lose his job, because I've been banging the drum that he's probably back next year, along with Andrew Berry, and that they're kind of getting a mulligan here. But I do think like the fan base certainly has their patience with Stefanski is run thin. And I think the last card he kind of had to play was, well, I've never really drafted and developed my own quarterback, but now he's theoretically drafted a quarterback he likes, and it's up to him to sort of get something out of that guy.
Yeah, no doubt. And early returns. And I'm not going to sit here and say the preseason is anything to kind of write home about, but it is data points. And Dillon does look like all those things. He looks like he can process fast. The ball does jump out of his hands. He is on the shorter side. He does kind of get swallowed up in the pocket, but the one thing is he's not afraid to stay in there and to live in there, live amongst the chaos and find different throwing lanes. So yeah, I'm certainly excited about it and taking a optimistic approach, but I think your point is correct. Like, at what point do we start questioning a lot of the things that are going on, especially in this one where, this is the first time, like you said, that he's going to get the chance to develop his rookie quarterback. And if it doesn't go well, certainly there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be asked, and a lot of fair questions at that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. I also want to know from people, because I think this is another interesting angle of this. We know that obviously Joe Flacco remains the quarterback too. And is there a world where they can actually go back to Flacco though? Like, for the locker room, for the fan base, for everyone, because if you're 4 games into the season and you're basically telling everybody this dude sucks and the offense sucks with him, I don't know how you pivot back to Flacco aside from anything other than an injury. Like if Dillon Gabriel gets hurt on Sunday, obviously Joe Flacco's coming into the game, but aside from that, I don't know that you can go back to Joe Flacco at this point. Like if it was rock bottom and you needed to bench him to try to change things, I don't know that going back to Flacco is really something that's a viable option for Stefanski to do.
No, I don't think so. And I think that kind of that's really the point of bringing Shedeur in too. Like if this doesn't go well with Dillon, in my opinion, you get 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks into this and the Browns maybe win once or twice and it's not looking good. Like what's the point then in going back to Joe? Like I think the way I view Joe is like, hey, if they're going to make a playoff push and he's still got a little bit left in the tank, that he's your guy. But then you got to figure out the rookies. And if you get your answer on Dillon, I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm not saying in 2 weeks, but over the course of a handful of games and a handful of weeks, I think it would be that would be a huge mistake, in my opinion, that you waste a year and not even learning what Shedeur could be. I think we saw some good in the preseason. You saw some bad, but until it's like live game, regular season bullets, you're really not going to know. And I think that you can't go back to Flacco if things kind of go off the rails with Dillon. Injuries, like you said, certainly open up a different conversation. But I don't think you can go back to Joe at this point. I think that ship is kind of on its way out.
I just think
it's Dillon or.
I just think you could only sell that once. Like, you could sell it at the beginning of the year that he gives you the best chance to win. Once you pivot off of it,
exactly.
I don't know that it's a card to play. And I don't know how that goes over in the locker room, like I said, because I think the locker room's going to look at that and say, well, you just told us like X amount of weeks ago that this guy was like, the offense was so bad with him that you couldn't keep starting him. Now you're going to try to sell us on, we're going to go back to this guy. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know that that's something that he can necessarily do. And from the fan base standpoint, I mean, let's face it, the fan base is only ever going to want to move forward. So for them, it's basically like, go to Shedeur next, or take a hike. Like they're not going to want to go backwards back to Joe Flacco if Dillon Gabriel struggles or anything. They're going to want to just move forward and say, okay, well, that's Dillon Gabriel, and now we want to see Shedeur Sanders, the other rookie that you drafted. So it's an interesting sort of situation here. But yeah, I think you almost have to only move forward and not go backwards.
You can't. You really can't go back to Flacco outside of injury, right? Like that's the only way you could spin it. Like, hey, we're going back to Joe. Dillon got hurt in the second half, whatever it is. I think going forward, if it goes well, you stick with Dillon. If it doesn't go well, it's time to give Shedeur a chance and just at least find out what he is. So you can know. That's the bigger part. You're going to have if Dillon does struggle, you're looking at a top 3 pick anyway, so it's figuring out what you have in that quarterback room and figuring out who your draft pick's going to be next year, because you're going to have 2, and it's looking like the Jaguars are going to rip off some wins here. So, that pick, while we wanted it to be a top 10 pick, probably in the teens and maybe even into the 20s, if the Jaguars keep on the pace that they're on.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, as we know, and it's still unknown what they'll even do with those picks, because that's the other thing that could play out here, Megs, too, is like they could ultimately decide, hey, we saw some of Dillon Gabriel this year. We liked what we saw. Let's ride with Dillon next year. And then they sort of hitch their wagon to him and basically say, like, we'll use those first round picks on, hey, we need to remake our offensive line, right? We need receiver help. And they'll sort of build the offense around Dillon Gabriel. That's a legitimate scenario. And that's another reason why, as I talked about, if Kevin Stefanski is like, if you're trying to judge Kevin Stefanski on this like whole situation and how this kind of goes and what kind of happens with Gabriel on the field, if that's going to be sort of like if they end up banking on him being their starter in 2026, it's absolutely fair to judge how he plays with Stefanski sort of developing him, because that's the guy they're going to hitch their wagon to. Well, then it's totally fair to sit there and decide and decipher whether or not they pick the right guy if that's how they end up playing this thing.
And I also, this is where when we played this out on draft night, when they took both of them, right? They took Dillon and then you take Shedeur. And it was at that time, it was so far out, the decision making that was going to go into this, that it didn't really kind of cross anyone's path. But now you're looking at it like you're going to have there's going to be an awkward moment here coming up very soon. And I think it's kind of here, the first of these, because let's say Dillon's very good. Okay. And then you have the opportunity to go use those picks to, a top pick, not on a quarterback. And you can do Caleb Downs maybe, or you can do an elite type of receiver, an elite type of tackle or something like that. Then you start having that conversation, but maybe that means you pass up on, Dante Moore from Oregon, or Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, or some of these like top tier guys who are going to be the franchise changing type quarterbacks. I think that they're going to have their hands full for sure. But The best thing Dillon can do is show that he can be a starter in this league. The worst thing he can do is show that he can't play in this league. But I think that what we're going to find is that he's very competent, very skilled. The ball comes out of his hands fast. It's protected. It's accurate. That's really what I'm excited to see, is how accurate he is. But that he can be a backup for a really long time on a cheap contract. And I think that if you get that out of him, it's a success. Anything more than that, I think is icing on the cake.
We got to get to the Shedeur part of this as well, because obviously he was not elevated to the QB2. They decided to roll with Flacco. And we saw what transpired in the locker room with that. Listen, I think it was pretty fair and reasonable to want to talk to and hear from Shedeur. He was another pick in this draft. He's going to always be compared to Dillon Gabriel especially as long as they're on the same team together. Mm-hmm. And he's been largely sort of restricted to being the number 3 guy on the depth chart, or the third or fourth guy on the depth chart throughout training camp and now during the regular season. And so it's like, but I listen, I understand what people are going to say, because there's a lot of criticism out there of like, why are people putting cameras in his face? Why are people asking the questions? I think we all have to just understand and sort of meet halfway on the idea that Shedeur Sanders is not your regular 5th round pick. He's not your regular 3rd string quarterback. He's Shedeur Sanders. He's a polarizing player, somebody who probably should have been drafted higher than he was, frankly, in my opinion. And I think a better player than he gets credit for. So like, yeah, when you have that type of guy on your team and there's certain conversations about like his talent level and where he's kind of at, I think it's fair to want to talk to him. He came in this exact same class. So, I was part of the scrum of people that was talking to him, obviously. In the moment, it was a very bizarre thing. We didn't really know what was happening. And we come to find out it was obviously him sort of issuing his own response, or lack thereof, to some of the national criticism he's gotten. I know Rex Ryan made some comments this week about him like running his mouth too much or whatever. And so I think he was basically playing this game of like, all right, they think I run my mouth, I'm just not going to say anything. It got his dad's approval. His dad was tweeting about it, or he had an Instagram comment about it. So yeah, like I think it's pretty obvious where he's coming from. And I think that's the thing people have to keep in mind here, but I know what it's going to look like. The smarter path for him probably would have just been to say, I'm just not going to talk to the media. Yeah. Like that's my way of not running my mouth anymore, because people are saying this, but Shedeur doesn't operate that way. Like he plays the game. He knows how to play the game. And so I understand why he did what he did to an extent. Actually, looking back, kind of think it was kind of comical in the grand scheme of things. But he's kind of become that whole thing's taken on a life of its own in a different way, in a different direction. And, I think it shouldn't overshadow Dillon Gabriel being the starter, which is why we led with Dillon Gabriel. He's the real story here. But I do think it was like an interesting conversation, or an interesting thing to sort of discuss here. And I also will say this, as we sort of alluded to with like not being able to go back to Joe Flacco. I do think going to Dillon Gabriel means you are one step closer to seeing Shedeur Sanders at some point this season. I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon, but I think that means you're one step closer to seeing him this season.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And kind of what I was saying earlier, if it goes south for Dillon, you got to go to Shedeur just to figure out what he is. Video was funny. I spent 2 minutes trying to fix my audio on my phone while I was watching your video. I was like, what in the heck? I can hear Spencer's question and I can hear all the other questions, but I can't hear what Shedeur is saying. What is he saying? And maybe I need a little bit better of awareness there. But bizarre, weird thing, funny, I think, but like also bizarre. But that was what he decided to do. I understand the thought process behind it, and what it was in response to. But I think two things can be true. I think he gets unfairly called out by Rex Ryan, because you're in the building every day. He's not he's not outward about anything other than he gets asked about, hey, what his goals are of the week. And he said, I want to be a great scout team player. Like, it's exactly what you want. That's a great answer for a guy who's trying to be valuable for his team. He's trying to, provide value for himself. And he just does and says all the right things. And then comes out that everyone just really wants to talk about him at all times. I think that part's weird too. It's just a fascinating scenario that the Browns have found themselves in because of drafting him, and one that it's going to take a couple twists and turns. But I think you're right. We are closer we're closer today to seeing him play than we were this time last week, because it's one decision away now.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not that I anticipate he's going to play, next week or the week after that. Now that could change if somebody gets hurt, of course. That there's always that scenario. But if we thought Shedeur was already going to play at some point this season, but we were anticipating Dillon wouldn't play until even a little bit later than now, this kind of expedites that process. And it's going to be interesting because if Dillon plays well, they might decide we want to see Dillon till at least the end of the season, or at least until our playoff hopes are dashed or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, if Dillon balls out and the offense is really good and everything they want to accomplish playoff-wise is still in front of them come, December, then maybe they just don't take Dillon out of the starting lineup. Maybe it just stays Dillon until the end of the season until you're mathematically eliminated. But I still think there's a world where they, approach Dillon if he does play well and you get to the end of the season and you're like, hey, we've seen a lot of good from you. We don't want you to get hurt or anything and waste you. So we're going to put, Shedeur out there for a game or two and just kind of see how it goes. But I don't know. It's a unique situation. I also will say this, by drafting these two quarterbacks, the Browns kind of put themselves in this situation where one is going to sort of be a bit of a distraction at times to the other. So they only really can blame themselves for that part of it. And yeah, as long as Dillon is out there playing, it's going to be, there's going to be these other storylines about well, why can't Shedeur get a chance when, Shedeur could do this or Shedeur could do that. And they're going to be compared to each other. And it's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Here's a question for you. When you're in the building and you're talking to them and seeing them kind of interact, do they interact at all together? I'm just more so curious.
Their lockers are in different places. I don't we see them interact on the field for sure. I don't know that we see them interacting so much in the locker room. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean they don't. I've never caught that necessarily, but now that you mentioned it, I'll try to pay attention to it more.
Yeah, I
don't think there's any animosity between them for what it's worth. People are going to bring up the stupid entertainers versus competitors thing. That was I don't believe that was about Shedeur Sanders. I think he was talking about the media versus the players.
There was also another one today or the other day when Dillon made a comment about waiting for the right time. You're going to wait for forever.
And he said the perfect time thing, like I said, and that's Shedur's song or whatever.
Perfect timing thing, yeah. Which I thought
about that.
I think that's all not. I don't know.
I'm choosing to believe people can make conspiracies out of anything.
Sure, and I'm choosing to believe that it's not. But just curious. Those quarterback battles, those quarterback situations can get weird. And those. And I'm not saying that two rookies would tear a locker room apart, but you do pick sides, whether other teammates believe they don't or they do, you do ultimately pick sides in it. And you just would hate for that to start happening. I'm not saying that it is, just curious to see how these two continue to interact with each other now that it's not preseason snaps, it is actually regular season snaps. And these guys are getting real work in real games, which I think is good.
Yeah. The quarterback conversation will continue to obviously be a prominent one. So we'll leave that there for now because we spent the first 28 minutes of the show talking just about that. I do want to get into this matchup with the Vikings, Megs, because there is a lot to sort of discuss here from a matchup standpoint. I honestly think, as we talk about how bad the Browns offense has been, listen, Brian Flores' defense against Dillon Gabriel does worry me for the Browns in this offense. But what I think the great equalizer is that this Vikings offensive line, if you think the Browns offensive line is bad, this Vikings offensive line is easily the worst in football right now. They are awful. They're having a lot of issues with injuries. Donovan Jackson, who was a draft pick for them out of Ohio State, is hurt. Ryan Kelly, their center, just had another concussion, and it was in a short window of time that he had concussion. Brian O'Neill's dealing with a sprained MCL, and he's unlikely to play this week. So they're missing 3 of their starters. The guys that are filling in are not very good. And so people like Myles Garrett have to be licking their chops this week that they're going to get some pretty favorable matchups up front that they can just wreak havoc. And we've seen the Browns defensive line dominate teams that are clearly better than the Vikings to this point in the season. I think it's going to be a good opportunity for this defense to just like absolutely pin their ears back, get after Carson Wentz, and that could be the thing that flips this game in their favor, whether the offense is great or whether the offense continues to struggle.
Yeah, and that's the other part too is the guy standing behind center is Carson Wentz, and I'm a Carson Wentz fan, I guess. I like when he plays well, but that's few and far between. This is a very unique player who in 6 straight seasons has started for 6 different teams. And when he's played against the Browns hasn't been good. The last time was against the Washington. It was the football team then, I think. And not even the Commanders, or it may have been the first year of the Commanders. I believe it was back in like 23, maybe 22 or 23. And he threw 2 picks in that game. Grant Delpit had an interception. I believe Denzel had an interception in that game. And Carson's just not, isn't. It is what you want to see from a Browns perspective back there. So I think your sentiment's right. Like I think we're going to be able to see this defensive line who. I've said it a couple times is must-watch television for sure, and they're going to have an opportunity to really flex their muscles and show exactly what they are against this beat-up Vikings front.
Yeah, listen, I know we like to save our predictions for Sunday morning, but I do have a certain vibe about this game because of that defensive line against this offensive line. Like that truly is something that just changes the entire outlook of this game.
Hell yeah!
I know. Listen. The Vikings have Justin Jefferson, and he's one of the best receivers in football. I think generally, like I have a lot of respect for them, some of the other guys within their offense. I think Jordan Mason's a pretty good runner, a pretty good running back for them. Jordan Addison's back, so him as like a number 2 to Justin Jefferson is a nice sort of tandem there. And so the secondary is going to have their hands full, no doubt. But I just think like when you really think about what this game is going to come down to, the trench play is going to matter. And this Browns defensive line is so dominant that you give them an opportunity to go up against a banged up offensive line like this. I think it's an opportunity to just like feast and take this game over. I mean, I'm talking like, think Browns Colts from 2023, where Myles Garrett just like took over that game and basically single-handedly won. Dude. Now you needed like 45 points or whatever the hell it was to win the game.
PJ Walker.
But like Myles just took over that game. And so, we always toss around the question of like, how many wins is Myles Garrett worth? This is one of those games where like he could absolutely single-handedly win a game for you. And he has help because the guys up front of the defensive line with him are also very, very good. And they're also getting their own, and they're also making a lot of big plays. So yeah, I think this Browns defense is in a really good spot to potentially just kind of take this game over. And even if the offense struggles a little bit, help them out in a major way and cause some problems for Carson Wentz, maybe force some turnovers and flip this game on its head completely.
Yeah, I'm mostly excited to see how the others perform, right? I think we're going to get a big game out of Myles Garrett, but I'm excited to see what Mason Graham does. I'm excited to see Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, all the other guys, Malik Collins, who's been hooping in the middle. I'm just really excited to see how that group comes together. And then that's that second level as well. Carson Schlesinger is starting to get some real hype, around the nation, around the league about what the kind of player he is. And we know it pretty well. He can freaking play football, and he's playing it at a very high level. So, the defense has an opportunity on Sunday to really get after the Vikings and make their lives really, really challenging. It's funny. I was just looking at the stuff for the game. I think the over-under is 37.5, which is like a stinky line. Like that's
like that's like a record low for the NFL.
Yeah, that's like low. That's going to be one that's like low for the season. But you're 2 great defenses against 2 bad offenses, and I guess I'm not going to say may the best man win, may the least bad man win in that case.
The least bad man win. I kind of like that phrasing there. Well, and I'll say this too: there has been teams that have played the Vikings to this point this season have seemed to have success also running the football. And so I think that's something to keep in mind too, because, like Minnesota this season has given up 4.5 yards per carry, which ranks 22nd in the NFL. And so as we've talked a lot the last couple of weeks about Quinshawn getting going and what he looks like in sort of adding a new dynamic to this offense, if the Browns can find some success running the football, maybe that helps take some of the Brian Flores blitz pressure that he likes to bring off of Dillon Gabriel and can help him get comfortable. And that's the path to winning on the offensive side of things. But I just think I keep going back to the defense because I think that's where this starts for the Browns. And for them to win this game, I think it in some way involves the defense making a big play and doing some damage to flip this game in Cleveland's favor in some capacity.
Yeah. Looking back at the Steelers game last week, Kenneth Gainwell, 19 carries for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Kenneth Gainwell isn't he's not a world beating running back. This is not a guy who you're scared about, but he had a huge day against this team. So it will be fun. Hoping also for Jerry Jeudy to get loose a little bit. DK Metcalf last week, 5 catches for 126 and a touch. Obviously, 80 of those came on 1 catch, but hoping just to get that unlocked. And what I'm really excited to see, Germ, is Dillon showed his ability to spread the ball around the field and work through progressions and get the ball to other guys. I'm excited to see what other guys can kind of step up, because we've pretty much seen to this point, the ball's either going to Jerry or to Harold or to Isaiah Bond. And that's pretty much been it. I'm excited to see the ball get spread, the wealth get spread amongst the entire offense and get a bunch of guys involved. And I think Dillon is going to, that's one of the things he does best. And I'm excited to see how that comes together.
I think that's a pretty good spot to leave it for now. Obviously, Anthony and I will be back pre-game on Sunday.
What's our Sunday schedule going to look like?
Honestly, we probably need to record something Saturday night and have it just go up at 5 a.m.
I'll be Saturday from the Horseshoe. So we'll be live from Buckeye from Ohio State.
Well, we don't have to go live. I think we just record.
We won't go live, but it'll be live on Sunday morning from
We'll
Ohio
just have to
State.
have it go live at 6 a.m. or something. I don't know. But we'll figure out how we're going to handle that.
You got to have you got to have a whole setup. Maybe you get dressed up.
I am definitely not. We're going to visit some family, so I'm not packing the car with stuff like that's not necessary. I'm only packing the essentials. I don't need tea. But regardless, we'll obviously have you covered pregame with our official predictions for the game. We'll see if either of us are brave enough to have the Browns score 20 points. It'd be a step in the right direction. And of course, in the days leading up to the game, make sure you head on over to roundtable.io/sports/NFL/Browns. Read our written content. We'll also post our predictions over there if you'd rather read them. We always do that first. Those usually go down on Saturday, and then we talk about it on Sunday. And we'll obviously give you updates on injuries and guys that are playing and whatnot, because Myles Garrett is on the injury report, by the way. Granted, he was limited. He was DNP on Wednesday and then limited on Thursday, but it was just kind of a walkthrough practice anyway. So we'll see what Friday brings. And so we'll have injury updates and all that for you pregame and whatnot as well. But certainly going to be a lot to get to and a lot to cover. And we look forward to it for sure.
Yeah, one thing we're going to do something too on Sunday. We'll have a live stream or a live thread going in our Roundtable channel. I'll probably be running it.
The community spot, yeah.
Yeah, and on the community side. So jump in there. You'll see it. We'll be tweeting it out. So get in there. Big plays, bad plays, good plays, halftime, all that stuff. Jump in there, hang out with us. We'll be in there mixing it up with you guys all throughout the game. So it'll be a fun morning. And I don't know what's your perspective on this, and then we'll get out of here. But what's your perspective on the early game? I'm
not a fan of taking games to other countries personally, because it's
America, dude.
American football. Why are we catering to all these other countries? But I do kind of appreciate that, we can wake up Sunday morning, cover this game, and then, the rest of the day, we're just, we're free. We can just watch other games. We don't have to, be, caught in the monotony of week to week doing the stuff that we got to do, just still talking about the Browns after the fact or, writing about – we're just kind of be done. We can be settled, and then we just watch the other games unfold and just kind of enjoy a Sunday of football. That's kind of nice. The game's going to be over by, lunchtime.
I may go for a walk at 6 p.m. Maybe.
Dude, you can watch the Browns game and then go golf. Go play 18. It's kind of a nice setup that way. So I do kind of appreciate that now that I'm covering a game that's at 9:30. But I'm still not a fan of taking American football to other countries. So
it's ours, dude.
Wasn't the whole point of the American Revolution that we weren't sharing things with England anymore? Come on, man. That was the whole point.
Now we're giving them our best thing.
Now we're taking one of our best things in football and our best exports, and we're just hey, come watch football. Did you hear Grant Delpit, by the way, pitching people in England?
Miami. We're Miami North. Cleveland? That should have been that's where we should have led with. We are Miami North.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I thought that was pretty funny. He was like,
good.
we're just like Miami. If you ever heard of Miami, I was like, that's you know what it took. You ever seen the movie Trainwreck?
No, sorry.
There's a scene in Trainwreck where LeBron is sitting there with Bill Hader, and they're at like lunch, and he's like, I think the whole point in the movie is like Bill Hader's like LeBron's personal doctor or something like that, and so he's like, dude, why don't you ever come visit me in Cleveland? You used to visit me in Miami all the time. He was like, well, that's Miami. He was like, what do you mean? What's the difference? There's nothing different about Cleveland and Miami. So immediately what I thought of when I heard Grant Delpit say that. So, hey, come follow along with us. Cleveland Browns football. It's just like Miami. Anyway,